And the other girl puts on her shirt too. I try to open the door, but it's locked. And to my surprise, my roommate gets mad.
All right, I'll do what I usually do. Hello, everybody. If you haven't heard anything I've said, because I've been on mute, so sorry about that. Welcome to class. And I said I'll do what I usually do is keep an eye on the waiting room to let people in as they arrive. So I hope everybody is doing well. Today we're back to sunny, right? So nice, great light outside, and we're gearing in. So last class, we were looking at, we looked at a play called The Glass Menagerie. And basically we looked at the beginning of the play, right? We looked at how the opening monologue or soliloquy is when the actor is talking to alone on stage. And we met a character named Tom, who was the son in a family that consisted of a mother and a sister. He had an older sister and a father who had left and abandoned them. And basically what we did was we looked at some videos of two different productions of three actually altogether, but two stage productions and one film production. And we looked a little bit at we talked a little bit about the contrast with it. The film clip ran right up until the end of class, so didn't have a chance to really talk about it. But we did, share a couple comments. And so some of the comments were how the production values were different, right? How on the theater, on the stage, you're confined to that particular space. In a movie, if you remember the movie part, he starts, it begins with the character of Tom walking, going into his building, he's able to walk through it. You see it's in the past when he's speaking, because there's a sense of that monologue taking place. It's a memory place, so he's remembering. So all this to say is that theater and a play and I'm going to apologize. My internet has been really crazy all day today. And so I'm hoping that it, bears with me. But definitely put in the chat if I'm getting choppy or you're not hearing me. But yes, so the point of looking at the different productions, yes, we the point of looking at the different productions is to show that one aspect of theater is performance and presentation. That yes, although while we can read a play and it's written on the page, the purpose of the play is to be performed, right? And that can be adapted to film, performance, and plays, and they have different resources at their disposal to be able to produce this and create it. But essentially, the story always comes through, right? Whether it's a production that has lower resources, or is a production that is a pre-professional company, which is a company that's in the college and these are students and they're learning to, get their craft together. Or later on, the other production that we saw, which was a more established theater company with actors that are more seasoned, that have better resources to make their productions, all the way to Hollywood, where we have a movie star like John Malkovich playing Tom. And, you may not recognize the other actors, but they're all very famous actors and actresses. from Hollywood that get to play those roles, and they create the whole set and everything. So so we're going to continue now. We're going to start moving into we're going to be reading a play called Ruby of Elsinore, but we're not ready to read get into Ruby of Elsinore yet or read it, because first we have to ground ourselves in a play that Ruby of Elsinore is a spin-off from, right, or inspired by. So Ruby of Elsinore is inspired by a very famous play called Hamlet by William Shakespeare. And we've talked about Shakespeare when we talked about theater at the beginning. Some of you talked about Shakespeare when at the beginning of this section, this third section. When we talked about poetry, we actually read one of Shakespeare's sonnets, right? Shall I compare thee to a summer's day, right? And we read that poem together. And when we read that poem, we talked about how Shakespeare wrote sonnets, but that he also his biggest fame, I believe, are plays. Yes, so it's important. So Ruby of Elsinore, yeah, Alan, is not necessarily a follow-up, right? But it's really an inspiration, and we'll see, right? I'll tell you a little bit about Ruby, and then we'll get into Hamlet, because I asked you to read the to be or not to be speech. And so I want to ask you a couple questions about that. So the first thing is, like, Ruby is set in a hair salon, and Elsinore is the place with a castle where Hamlet and his family live, like this, the area is called Elsinore, right? And so Ruby of Elsinore is Ruby of this area, right? But in this case, Ruby is a hairdresser in a salon. And what happens in the play that we're going to read is that the characters from Hamlet, his mother Gertrude, etc., all take a turn in the seat in Ruby's salon, right? So that's how that is working. But so in order to understand Ruby, we have to know Hamlet. So has anybody here read or seen Hamlet? I'm gonna take the silence. I have seen it. Okay, great. So one, Alan has seen it. Anyone else has experienced it, seen it, or read the play? Okay, well, good. I mean, I think if good for Alan for experienced it, and everyone else is going to get some kind of introduction to Hamlet now. Let me check the chat again. Here we go. Let me make sure I am in speaker view, right? So a little bit, I think I may have read it, but not sure. Okay, you read his other plays, Catherine, and Adrian says I haven't. Okay, all right. And there's another message. And Jaylene has. Okay, well, good. I mean, so some of you have some knowledge or familiarity with Hamlet, and some of you do not, right? But one of the most famous things, whether you've read Hamlet or you have never read Hamlet or you don't know anything, one thing that most people know are the to be or not to be speech, right? So there's certain of Hamlet's monologues or soliloquies sometimes that kind of seep into popular culture, and they appear on television sitcoms. And one popular was like Romeo, Romeo, wherefore art thou, Romeo? You know, deny thy father and refuse thy name. You know, that's from Romeo and Juliet. And very often, sometimes we'll see a sitcom or a TV show or a movie, and the students in the movie are studying that scene. That's the famous balcony scene where Juliet is speaking out into the night, and she thinks she's speaking alone, but there's Romeo in the garden listening to her speech and wax poetic about him. So in Hamlet's to be or not to be, sometimes just those words, the phrase is to be or not to be, that is the question. Many people know that, you know, whether they know it's a reference to Hamlet, you hear that. It's seeped into popular culture. But since this literature class asked you to read it, does anybody have a question, or did they have a reaction or any thoughts about the to be or not to be speech? Is it something what you expected? Is it, you know, so any reflection on the to be or not to be speech? This is before we dive into it. I'm just pausing to give folks a chance to chat if you Said, oh, I remember it, I don't remember it, I liked it, I didn't understand it, it was clear. Because, you know, I'll pause because I want to keep talking, but I'll give you a minute to collect your thoughts and then I'll keep talking.
I liked it. It was just kind of hard for me to understand because of the language.
Uh-huh. The language and the ways, yes. Great, thank you. Any other reactions? Same thing, chat or unmute. Catherine liked it, okay. Okay, let's build with that. I remember I read it in Spanish. What was the dialogue? Yes. In Spanish is ser or no ser, right? To be or not to be. Interesting. That's another thing that Shakespeare's been translated in so many languages. It was hard to understand. Yeah. It's not a very big piece, but it's very dense, right? And there's a phrase that's called Baroque, B-A-R-O-Q-E-U-E. I'm going to type it in the chat because it sounds like being broke. Es la pregunta, right? B-R-O-Q-U-E, Baroque, right? This phrase, this word Baroque, right? And not Baroque like you ain't got no money, right? Baroque. Baroque means like, and it's a style, right, of music, and it's a style, it's a design style. And what Baroque means is that there's usually lots of curly things kind of fold into each other. And so there's something Baroque about the language that Shakespeare uses, right? And the way you have to think as well, the character is thinking, right? They're being reflective. Yeah, words are even difficult in Spanish. Oh, for sure. There are, almost every time I teach this, I have to connect to vocabulary words on here because he uses words like contumely and quietus and fardel and bodkin. Like he uses words that we're like, we don't use those words today. You know, that's not vocabulary words that we use in our everyday speech. And so sometimes the language or the vocabulary of the words that are used sometimes are like barriers to getting into it. But just like we did with poetry, when you slow down, you can unlock it, right? So, so we're going to look at the to be or not to be speech, and we're going to unlock it a little bit with us. So if you felt it was difficult or hard to understand, hopefully after we've gone through it together, we're able to go into it a little more. So I'm going to actually do the slow read part. Normally I do read it and then read it again, but that's why I asked you to read it. So at least you had some familiarity with it. So I'm going to go do the slow read part and go through it section by section. And then we'll do something else with it. So I'm going to bring it up on the screen. So let me share my screen. Here we go. And it should be right here. Yes. And I'm just going to move. I'm going to make this small so that we have more space. And I'm going to move the chat to the side so that I can see it and we can go, right? So from Hamlet, and it's spoken by Hamlet. So to be or not to be, that is the question, right? That first line, to be or not to be. Very often the most common interpretation is like to live or not to live, to exist or not to exist. That is the question that this character's pondering, thinking about. And then he says, whether 'tis nobler in the mind, right? So 'tis, we're like, we don't do 'tis, right? But it means it is, right? Because there's a little apostrophe there. But he says, whether 'tis nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, right? Whether it's nobler, whether it's a noble thing to think about, to have in your mind, right? So is it noble for us to think that what would be a good thing is to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune? Meaning for us to like weather, to take it, you know, to take all the tough things that happen to us, right? Whether it's a better noble to swallow and deal with it, or to take arms against the sea of troubles and by opposing end them, right? Or to fight them and end them, right? So if we go right, to be or not to be, to exist or not to exist, that's the question. He says, well, is it better? Like, you know, is it higher, more noble, right? For us to suffer and be able to take it, or to say no and fight it, right? And try to end them, right? Simple, like these ideas just in those lines, right? Then we continue. He says, to die, to sleep. Remember, he's thinking, to die, to sleep, no more. And by sleep to say, we end the heartache and the 1,000 natural shocks that the flesh is heir to, right? So he's saying, right, to die, to sleep, like if you die or you sleep, or if you're dead, right? That the heartache and and all the horrible things that happen to us that our bodies can take, right? That we end them, right? So to die, to sleep, no more. And by sleep to say we end the heartache and the 1,000 natural shocks that the flesh is heir to. It is a consummation, like it takes us over, devoutly to be wished, right? The idea of ending this pain, right? The pain of living, right? The pains of life. Continues, to die, again, to sleep. To sleep, he says, perchance or by chance or maybe to dream. And he goes, there's the rub. Rub means, like in this case, there's the problem, right? So first it's saying to die or to sleep, and by sleep meaning death, right? And that the heartache here, he's saying, and that by dying, then of course all the problems and all that we have in the end, right? Then he goes again, to die, to sleep, right? To sleep, perchance to dream. Yes, it's an eternal battle, completely. That's what Hamlet is inside of his head, right? He's saying, perchance to dream. He goes, there's the problem. He goes, for in that sleep of death, what dreams may come when we have shuffled off this mortal coil, right? There's the problem, because when you're asleep of death, like what kind of dreams are we gonna have, right? After we've shuffled off, after we've left our bodies, this mortal coil, right? That has to give us pause. Like, you have to think about that. Let's think about this for a minute. So if we sleep, right, the sleep of death, and we dream, what dreams are gonna come, right? That's what gives us pause. He says there's respect that makes calamity of so long life, right? That you're thinking about that perhaps that the dreaming is about could be all the problems, right? So this says, for who would bear the whips and scorns of time, the oppressor's wrong, right? So it's saying, so who, right? Who's gonna take, how could you take it? You can't take it in life. And then what if you die and your dreams are about all the strife? So who's gonna be able to take the whips and the scorns of time, the oppressor's wrong? Like when you're oppressed, somebody's trying to keep you down, right? The proud man's contumely. That means bad mouthing, like bad language, right? Putting down. The pangs, right? The pains of disprized love, right? He's listing now all the things that hurt us, right? The whips and scorns of time, when somebody has power, does wrong to us, when some proud man talks us down, when we loved and it's not returned, the law's delay, justice, right? When justice isn't served, the insolence of office and the spurns that patient merit of the unworthy takes, right? So the spurns, like the things that we get pushed away from us, that patient merit of the unworthy takes, right? Famine is another, yes. So he makes this list. He goes, imagine you're dreaming about all this stuff, like you're remembering, right? When he himself might his quietest make, right? So when he himself might quietest make, again, let me just stop for a second and come back to everybody. So if we just think about it, I know you can see the text, I just wanted to connect with you all, that so the text is like this idea, this mental, I just want to comment it, this internal battle, I'll use your language, right? Coral said this internal battle to do what you really want or not, between what is right and what is wrong, right? And in this case, it could be, yes, I think there is what Carl is bringing up, there's this parallel track, this double meaning to the speech, right? On the one hand, Hamlet, the character, is thinking, should I live? Should I die? Right? If I die, all the suffering that I'm going through ends. But, will it end? Because if I die, and what if we dream or have some kind of consciousness that happens after death? What would that consciousness be? Would it be remembering and seeing all this pain and reliving it? Oh my goodness, if I'm living it and I'm killing myself to end it, but what if by killing myself, it just continues, right? So he's in this quandary. But then I think on the other hand, if you know the play, Hamlet, the other parallel track is not only about his own living and existence, it's about the decisions that he needs to make, right? And we're going to learn more about who Hamlet is in the story in the second part of this class, right after we go through the speech. And so he has a big dilemma, right, that he's trying to navigate to do the right thing. And in this case, the right thing is to get revenge for his father's death, right? He has discovered that his father was murdered. And so he's like, whew, and the father's ghost has asked him, avenge my death. So he's like, oh, okay, I gotta avenge your death by killing the man who's king. So it's a big decision he has to make, right? So let me just go back to sharing the screen a moment, but let me just go right here. Oh no, I'm not sharing. I'm at the doc. Boom, boom, boom. Okay, here we go. Right. So where we're here, right? So he's like for in that sleep, what dreams may come, and there could be all these things that we're doing. He goes, when so that patient merit of us of the unworthy takes, right? When he himself might his quietest make with a bare bodkin, right? It says, how could we think all this when when he himself, meaning that you can take this quietest means like death or something that causes death with a bare bodkin, right? So a bodkin is in the old days was a hairpin, but it's also kind of a point. It's just basically a pointy object. So he's saying, okay, if I go back up here for in that sleep, right? For in that sleep of death, what dreams may come? He asks. When we have shuffled off this mortal coil, when we leave our skin, when we leave our flesh, our bodies, right? And he said that must give us pause because what if you're thinking about all these horrible things like the scorns of time, being oppressed, not being loved, injustice, all these things. And this is all these things that we have to take, right? When, we ourselves might cause our own death with just by a bare bodkin, like a something that a pointy object, right? And then says, who would far those bear, like whose burdens, right? To grunt and sweat under a weary life, but the dread of something after death, right? So the only ways you would keep suffering in life is because you're now afraid of something after death, right? The undiscovered country, right? You now we're afraid of dying, like from those who born the undiscovered country, right? Yes, Carl, he's having an existential crisis. The undiscovered country from who's born, like whoever goes there, no traveler returns, puzzles the will, right? And makes us rather bear those ills we have than fly to others that we not know of, right? So then he says, okay, I could kill myself and I could end all this. But what if what if ending it doesn't end it and there's some kind of dreaming or a consciousness? What happens in that consciousness? Am I going to be remembering all the horrible things? Oh no. If I'm afraid of dying and not knowing what's on the other side, because so that's the only reason why we put up with all the drama of our lives is because maybe the afterlife is not, a place that we're gonna know. So it says, but the dread of something after death, right? Being afraid of what you're gonna after death, that undiscovered country from who's born, no traveler returns, puzzles the will and makes us rather bear those ills we have than fly to others that we don't know of, right? So we swallow, we take it. And because thus consciousness, right? This idea of thinking, this consciousness doth make cowards of us all, right? So he's stuck. He doesn't want to live and he's afraid of dying, right? He doesn't know if we should do this thing or if we should do that thing, right? And thus the consciousness that makes cowards of us all, and thus the native hue of resolution is sickly owed with the pale cast of thought. So the idea of making a decision gets stuck in the idea of thought, of thinking. And enterprises of great pith, and pith is just like in a tree, it's like the center, but it's like pith is the essence of something, right? And enterprises of great pith, right? And things that are at the core, right? And moment with this regard, their currents turn awry and lose the name of action. So he's saying we get stuck, like he's stuck. Like, should I live? Should I die? If I die, what if it's worse? So if it's worse, I may as well live. And if I can't, and I might have to deal with it. And what if, and so in this place, I can't make a decision. I can't make a move. I don't know what to do. And that is the quandary that Hamlet finds himself in the play. So on one hand is about his own life, but on the other hand is about this decision, this big decision to avenge his father's death. And in thinking about it for so long and so deeply and so baroquely, like in terms of I could live, I could die, but if I die, it could be worse. And if it's worse, then I should live. And if I live, but who would live with all this pain? But, except if you're afraid of what's on the other side. So he's kind of like keeps going back and forth. And he says, and in this back and forth, in this sense of decision, we lose the name of action, right? That he doesn't act, right? So that is the to be or not to be speech, which uses a lot of words and a lot of ideas and a lot of parenthetical phrases. Parentheticals, like is not literally a parentheses, but these clauses within the clauses to communicate this idea. So I wanted us just to have an understanding of the speech because it's this big speech, right? And it begins with to be or not to be, that is the question. And that is what the whole thing's about, right? The idea of living or dying, acting or not acting, right? And then that's the question. And then the idea of pondering it and thinking about it, sometimes overthinking about it to the point that you just are paralyzed and you can't move, right? You lose action, lose the name of action, right? So I'm gonna stop sharing for a moment, right? So I just went through. So you lose. So anyway, yes. So you lose the action. So that's kind of like one of the core themes in Shakespeare's Hamlet. Now let's, because we're doing theater, let's look at two. And I have more, but I think I uploaded this to the site and I might update it. Two actors reading the soliloquy, right? And I'm using, I think they're both British actors. So there are Americans that do it as well, but yes. So let's see, yes, the unknown frontier, right? Because it says the land from which those born never return, right? Tough choices can make or break a person, right? Yes, very much so. Okay, so let me share my screen again. And we can see this soliloquy here. Queued up without the ads, hopefully.
To be or not to be? That is the question. Whether 'tis nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to take arms against a sea of troubles, and by opposing, end them. To die. To sleep. No more. And by asleep, to say, we end the heartache and the 1,000 natural shocks that flesh is heir to. 'Tis a consummation devoutly to be wished. To die. To sleep. To sleep, perchance to dream. Aye, there's the rub. For in that sleep of death, what dreams may come when we have shuffled off this mortal coil must give us pause. There's the respect that makes calamity of so long life. For who would bear the whips and scorns of time, the oppressor's wrong, the proud man's contumely, the pangs of despised love, the law's delay, the insolence of office, and the spurns that patient merit of the unworthy takes, when he himself might his quietus make with a bare bodkin, who would fardels bear to grunt and sweat under a weary life, but that the dread of something after death, the undiscovered country, from whose bourne no traveller returns, puzzles the will, and makes us rather bear those ills we have than fly to others we know not of. Thus, conscience does make cowards of us all. And thus, the native hue of resolution is sicklied o'er with the pale cast of thought, and enterprises of great pitch and moment with this regard, their currents turn awry and lose the name of action.
Stop sharing and let me go back to that.
This oceanside verbo is about to become the backdrop for an unforgettable vacation memory.
Ads. Okay. So, did you think the actor delivering it, the way he paused and expressed himself, helped reveal the meaning of the soliloquy? Anybody have that experience, or it's helpful? Yeah, we see him thinking, right? We see him thinking it through. He's imagining, he's gesturing. There was that moment he's rubbing his chest and he's thinking about, like, this idea of death and sleep, it sounds like a poem. Yeah, well, it is. Remember, we were talking about, I said when we were studying poetry, we said there's one of the, it's a dramatic monologue. And I said later when we do theater, we'll see them. So we've seen one from The Glass Menagerie, and now we just encountered one in Shakespeare. So it is a poem, and that's why sometimes it takes a moment to slow down and read it. And as we talked about the language, right, the language that is being used in it also, and the vocabulary is not what we use today, how we speak today. But yes, it's very much so. But yeah, with that particular one, I like that one because he is doing that. The idea of wondering. He says when he goes to dream, and then he says, but then you can see almost a change in his face when he talks about, when he starts wondering, like, what's on the other side? Oh my goodness, maybe it's not such a good idea. But yes. So what's interesting is to see how one actor could deliver it. There's so many. There's a very famous actor named Sir Laurence Olivier, who is, of course, is no longer with us. He died many years ago now. and many others. Kenneth Branagh is a British actor. I think this actor I could detect a little bit of an Irish brogue in his delivery. So maybe he's Irish, this actor. I'm gonna look him up. And but let's take a look at one other one just to see a different interpretation. And I want you to think about, when you see this next one, to also think about tone, right? And also think about that we are seeing videos. So what you saw, the first one was a video of a stage production, but they were also using cameras, they were zooming in, so there's moments where we're closer to him. This next one is going to be very different. But I want you to think about tone and see if there's something about the tone or the mood that's different from the first one to the second one, right? Share screen.
To be or not to be? That is the question. Whether 'tis nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to take arms against a sea of troubles and by opposing, end them. To die. To sleep no more. And by asleep, to say we end the heartache and the thousand natural shocks that flesh is heir to. 'Tis a consummation devoutly to be wished. To die. To sleep. To sleep, perchance to dream. Aye, there's the rub. For in that sleep of death, what dreams may come when we have shuffled off this mortal coil must give us pause. There's the respect that makes calamity of so long life. For who would bear the whips and scorns of time, the oppressor's wrong, the proud man's contumely, the pangs of despised love, the law's delay, the insolence of office, and the spurns that patient merit of the unworthy takes, when he himself might his quietus make with a bare bodkin? Who would fardels bear to grunt and sweat under a weary life, but that the dread of something after death, the undiscovered country from whose bourne no traveller returns, puzzles the will, and makes us rather bear those ills we have than fly to others that we know not. Conscience does make cowards of us all, and thus the native hue of resolution is sickly o'er with the pale cast of thought, and enterprises of great pitch and moment with disregard, their currents turn awry, and lose the name of action.
These are the forgeries of jealousy, and never.
Yeah, so that, as Alan was commenting in the chat, he does a very good job with, let me just say, I can't see it all here, with how he emotes. Okay, that was one observation he was making. What about any other observations? We're gonna build on that one, but any other observations between how this one was delivered? Well, people are thinking, let me build off of Alan's comment. Yeah, I mean, emotes, right? So in this one, we only see the face, right? So it's only the face, and he just has the eyes, gestures, like subtle gestures to think about this, to make that wavering idea. And I'm sure it's kind of like that's how the director wanted it. The director said, I'm going to sit you there, you're going to be in dark, we're going to do a close up of your face. And that's how he delivers that. So it's interesting to see the, you know, the effect of gesture, the effect of the face, right? Facial expressions, the effect of, in the first one, more movement, and how all of those things are being employed to be able to give you meaning, right, to the text, to help you understand the text. So let me talk to you about Hamlet now. So we're going to go through the story of Hamlet. And then if we have time, which I think we should, I'll play something for you that's, you know, that may be fun, but I'll give you a, a warning before it. But yes, so in your packet, when I think a couple weeks ago when I was trying to be super ambitious, and I forget who was it, somebody said it was a lot, and I was like, all right, I need to slow down. I know the semester is coming to an end. Let me slow down a little bit. And then I said, that's why I'm focusing more on theater. And then we're going to start making the transition next week to start incorporating more of the research paper. And but a couple weeks ago, I said to read, and then I said, forget about it. Just focus on your fiction essay. This section, I said at the beginning, Hamlet by William Shakespeare. So basically, this is just a summary, right? So that you understand the main plot elements and the characters, and these are the things you need to know to be able to follow Ruby of Elsinore, or get more out of it. You don't necessarily need it to follow, because I think you would get a lot out of it either way. So Hamlet by William Shakespeare, right? So Prince Hamlet, he's depressed. And having been summoned home to Denmark, right? From school, he was in school in Germany. He was summoned home to Denmark from school in Germany to attend the father's funeral. Now he's shocked when he gets there to find his mother, Gertrude, already married. The queen has wed Hamlet's uncle, Claudius, the dead king's brother. Now to Hamlet, the marriage is foul incest, right? Because they married your husband's brother. So worse still, Claudius has had himself crowned king, despite the fact that Hamlet was his father's heir to the throne. So Hamlet's like, something is up. He suspects foul play, right? So we got the situation where Hamlet's away at school. He's come home, your father's dead. He gets home and the father's not only dead, but the mother has married his uncle, and the uncle now is the king. So he said, how did all this happen, right? I'm supposed to be king if he dies, but let's leave that alone for a minute. So he's back home in Denmark. He's at Elsinore, and that's the castle where they live. So on a dark winter night, a ghost walks through the ramparts of Elsinore in Denmark, right? So it speaks to Hamlet, declaring ominously that it is indeed his father's spirit, and that he was murdered by none other than Claudius, who says he poured poison into King Hamlet's ear when the old king was napping. Now, if you don't know anything about the anatomy of the ear, your ear connects to your throat, right? So, unable to confess and find salvation, this is the ghost speaking to Hamlet, King Hamlet, right, the king, is now consigned for a time to spend his days in purgatory and walk the earth by night. He entreats or asks Hamlet or begs him to seek revenge on the man who usurped his throne and married his wife, and then the ghost disappears. So Prince Hamlet devotes himself to avenging his father's death, but because he is so contemplative and thoughtful by nature, he delays and enters into a deep melancholy and even apparent madness, right? He finds himself more confused than ever. In his persistent confusion, he questions the ghost's trustworthiness. What if the ghost is not a true spirit, but rather an agent of the devil sent to tempt him? What if killing Claudius results in Hamlet's having to relive his memories for all eternity? Hamlet agonizes over this, what he perceives as his cowardice, right? His fear, because he cannot stop himself from thinking. So words immobilize Hamlet, but the world he lives in prizes action, right? So as a king, as a fighter, they want action, but he's lost in thoughts, right? So Claudius and Gertrude, right, her new husband, and his uncle, worry that the prince he's acting strange, like his erratic behavior, and attempt to discover its cause, right? So they ask a pair of Hamlet's friends, Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, to watch him, right? So Claudius and the queen get nervous They're like, all right, let's get his buddies to keep an eye on him. And the buddies are Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, right? So Polonius, who is a lord in the area, suggests that Hamlet might be in love with his daughter Ophelia. He says, maybe he's acting so weird because he's in love with my daughter. Claudius agrees to spy on Hamlet in conversation with Ophelia. But though Hamlet certainly seems mad, he does not seem to love Ophelia. He orders her to enter a nunnery and declares that he wishes to ban marriages. So when Ophelia and him are talking, he says, literally the line is, get thee to a nunnery. Like, if you want me, forget about it. You better go, become a nun. And he says, in fact, we should just get rid of marriage altogether, right? So now a group of actors, traveling actors, come to Elsinore, and Hamlet says, I'm going to take this opportunity to test my uncle's guilt. So he will have the players perform a scene closely resembling the sequence by which Hamlet imagines his uncle to have murdered his father, so that if Claudius is guilty, he will surely react, right? So he says, there's a group of actors. My father's ghost told me that my uncle poured poison in his ear, and if I get the theater company to reenact that, I'm going to watch my uncle / now new king, stepfather Claudius, and if he reacts guiltily, then that will assure me that he did it, right? So Hamlet imagines his uncle's, okay, I read that. When the moment of the murder arrives in the theater, Claudius leaps up and he leaves the room. Hamlet and Horatio agree that this proves, Horatio's his friend, proves his guilt. He's like, because in the moment of the scene, he got up. So Hamlet goes to kill Claudius, but when he does, he finds him praying. And since he believes that killing Claudius while in prayer will send Claudius' soul to heaven, Hamlet considers it would be better be an inadequate revenge and decides to wait. He goes, wait, he's praying. If I kill him, he's going to go to heaven. I don't think that's fair. I'm going to wait, right? So Claudius, now frightened of Hamlet's madness and fearing his own safety, orders that Hamlet be sent to England, right? So get rid of him, send him to England. Hamlet goes to confront his mother, in whose bedchamber Polonius, right, the guy who was the lord that was, talking about, maybe he's in love with my daughter, right? Polonius is hiding behind the tapestry. So when Hamlet's talking to his mother, trying to tell her, like, what's going on, what's up with me and having to go to England, he hears a noise and he thinks it's Claudius. So he goes from behind the curtain tapestry. So he goes and he stabs, right, the tapestry, and his sword instead of goes through the fabric and kills Polonius. So for this crime, they say he immediately has to be sent to England with Rosencrantz and Guildenstern. However, Claudius's plan for Hamlet includes more than banishment. He has given Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, his two friends who are supposed to watch him, sealed orders for the King of England demanding that Hamlet be put to death. So he's like, I'm going to send my friend, the King of England, a note that said when this person gets there, Hamlet, he has to kill him. So in the aftermath of her father's death, right, because Polonius was her father, Hamlet kills him. Ophelia goes crazy with grief and she drowns in the river. Now, her brother, Polonius, is like a soap opera, right? Laertes, right, who has been staying in France, comes to Denmark enraged, right? Because Claudius convinces him that Hamlet is to blame for his father's death, because he stabbed him, and his sister's death, because she was so sad with grief that she kills herself. So when Horatio and the king received letters from Hamlet indicating the prince has returned to Denmark, right, because he sent them off on a ship, but he's come back to Denmark because on the way there, the ship was attacked by pirates and he had to come back. So Claudius comes up with another plan. Laertes, the brother of Ophelia, who was like pissed that his sister got killed and his father, when his sister dies and his father got killed, right, wants revenge for Hamlet because he believes, because the king told him, that it's because of Hamlet. So Laertes says, I'm going to fence. We're going to fight, with the fencing swords, right? They're going to fence Hamlet, but Claudius, right, decides, and this whoever wins, that's justification. But Claudius, what he does, poisons Laertes' blade, so that if he cuts Hamlet, right, Hamlet will die because of the poison. But as a backup plan, right, the king says, I'm going to poison a goblet in case Hamlet strikes first. And in which case, we'll just say we'll toast, and when Hamlet drinks the toast, he'll die, right? So Hamlet returns to the vicinity of Elsinore just as Ophelia's funeral is taking place. Stricken with grief, he attacks Laertes, declares that he had in fact always loved Ophelia when he was telling her before, if you want me, you better go become a nun because it ain't happening. Go again, he goes, so back at the castle, he tells Horatio that he believes one must be prepared to die, since death can come at any moment. A foolish courtier named Osric arrives in Claudius' order to arrange the fencing match between Hamlet and Laertes. So remember, the king's like, all right, they're going to match, they're going to fence. Laertes, we're going to dip his sword in poison. So if he scratches Hamlet or cuts him, the poison will kill Hamlet. And if Hamlet strikes Laertes with his regular sword, we'll toast him, but we'll give him the goblet with poison. So he can drink the goblet and then he'll die. So either way, the king is planning to kill Hamlet, either by the sword or by the goblet. So the sword fighting begins, right? Hamlet does score the first hit, but decides, I don't want to drink from the goblet. The goblet is there, so instead, Gertrude, the queen, takes a drink from it and she dies. Okay. Laertes does succeed in wounding Hamlet, though Hamlet does not dive the poison immediately. First, Laertes is cut by his own sword's blade, and after revealing to Hamlet that Claudius is responsible for the queen's death, like he tells him, your father's the one who poisoned it and put the poison in the cup, he dies. So Laertes dies, the queen is dead. Hamlet then stabs Claudius with the poisoned sword and forces him to drink the rest of the poison wine. Claudius dies. Then Hamlet dies immediately after achieving his revenge. And then before he dies, Hamlet declares that the throne should now pass to Prince Fortinbras of Norway, and he implores his true friend Horatio to accurately explain the events that have led to the bloodbath at Elsinore. With his last breath, he releases himself from the prison of his words. The rest is silence, right? And the play ends with Prince Fortinbras as the King of Denmark, and he gives a funeral with full honors to Hamlet. So, needless to say, Hamlet is a tragedy. Like at the end of the play, everybody's dead. You know, the queen is dead, Hamlet's dead, Ophelia is dead, Polonius is dead, Laertes is dead, you know, Claudius is dead. So everybody dies at the end of Shakespeare, of Hamlet's, right? So the characters that we read about were Hamlet, right? And he's the Prince of Denmark, the crown prince, who returns from the university in Wittenberg, Germany, to find his father dead, his mother married to the king's brother, Claudius, and Claudius's newly self-crowned king. So he crowned himself king. Then there's Claudius, right? He's the king of Denmark, right? Dead King Hamlet's brother, like his uncle. He's his father's uncle, who has taken the throne, usurped the throne, and married a sister. Then we have his sister-in-law. Then we have Gertrude, who's the queen of Denmark, and she's Hamlet's mother. And now she's King Hamlet's widow, like his father's widow, and King Claudius's wife. Another character is the ghost of the late King Hamlet, right? The ghost that appears to Hamlet and says, hey, guess what? I got killed by my brother, right? So that's another one. And then we talked about Polonius, right? The Lord of Chamberlain, and he is a counselor to Claudius, but he's the one that gets killed behind the curtain. There's Laertes, which is his son, who was away in Paris and finds out about the death of his father and the sister's death as well. And he, you know, has the sword fight at the end. There's Ophelia, right? The daughter of Polonius, who was in love with Hamlet and said, I love you and all that. And Hamlet's like, really? You love me? You better go become a nun. And then afterward, when she's dead, he's like, oh my God, I really loved her. Right? Then there's Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, and those are the two friends, classmates of Hamlet that Queen Gertrude and King Claudius put in charge of keeping an eye on him because he's acting a little weird. And then there's at the end Fortinbras, which is, you know, no, he's just the person who becomes king at the end of the play. So, so I wanted to give you that synopsis. Oh my God, Catherine. So I wanted to give you that synopsis of the play, right? So we got this whole idea of Hamlet, and so we need to know these things, these plot ideas, and I'm waiting for that truck to honk again. So these plot ideas and these characters. So those are the two things you need to know for Ruby of Elsinore, right? That Hamlet was away at school, that his father's ghost asked him to avenge his death, that Hamlet as a character is very indecisive, that Ophelia was in love with him and he just, whatever, turned her away, that the queen married the king like right away, like, and that her brother's her husband's brother right away, and that the husband brother murdered his brother so that he could become king, right? So those are just plot elements and the characters that we need to do. Yeah, again, like the Lion King, there is that. It is a very much there is very much like the Lion King, right? He tries to be king, and is it Simba? No, I'm confusing it maybe with another lion. But anyway, but that very much like the plot of the Lion King. So I'm gonna share it, what I just did. I'm just gonna show you maybe with the very, very end of class. I think it's about 5 minutes. We have about 15 minutes. So that's what we need to know. If any of you would like to begin reading Ruby of Elsinore, that's the play. I'm gonna share my screen now so you can see it for next class, but we're gonna read it together, right? But so what I just read to you is in a file called Hamlet Synopsis and Ruby of Elsinore. And the Hamlet synopsis that I just shared with you is written out like this. And then after it's written out, you get the characters that are listed. And then we have the play Ruby of Elsinore. And we're going to read this together as a class beginning on Monday. But if any of you would like to read it, over the weekend, because you have, because it'd be fun, good to do that. But if not, don't worry about it. We'll read it together as a class on Monday. And we should be able to read the whole thing on Monday. That's my expectation, because I think it's just, yeah, we'll read the whole thing on Monday, and then we'll begin talking about it. Okay. So before I share with you another synopsis of Hamlet, and if not, we don't have time, I'll just send you the link and you can see it on your own. So I want to talk about, again, like you don't have a major assignment this weekend to work on. You could read the play, it's optional. If not, definitely take the time to do one of two things, right? And that is, I'm going to speak a little bit. So I haven't graded them. I'm going to start grading the papers, but you could look for them by definitely by Sunday, I would have graded them. But I want to show you a little bit of what one of those looks like. I said I would do that. I'm going to share that, share today what a graded turn it in assignment looks like. But I also want you, if you have not submitted your fiction essay, and I would say there's about like 8 or 9 of you who have not submitted it. And this is like us, including people who said they were going to hand it in a little later, which is okay. But it'd be almost urgent for you to get it in by Friday, because I'm going to begin grading perhaps today. I'm going to begin grading, officially grading. I was just reading them and just taking a look at them, but I'm going to begin grading today, and I'm hoping to finish grading definitely before the weekend, definitely before our next class. But if this weekend I'm giving time to do it, so make sure yours get in so you can get graded. So it's not only the importance of doing the work and doing particularly the major assignments is not only because of your grade, but if that's an incentive, it is because of your grade. Like these graded assignments really are the ones that determine a big bulk part of your grade, right? So we've got the fiction, the poetry essay, we have this fiction essay. We're going to write an essay related to Ruby of Elsinore, right? And then we're going to do the research paper. And then you'll have a final exam that's going to be another essay. And also if you get your fiction essay done and you've done your poetry essay, you'll be able to compare the grades and then revise one of those. So, we have about like a little over 5 weeks left of class, but, or about 4.5 weeks maybe left of class. But you want to be able to give yourself the time to do all that stuff, to make sure, and to do the revision, so you could try to get the best grade that you can. Also, doing the assignments, that's how you build your writing skills, right? If you write something and I comment on it, on your essay, you get feedback, and that's how you know for the next one to improve from the last one. So it's important for you to do your assignments for your grades and for your own development. And I know there's like one or two of you who have not done your poetry essay, which I've been doing some inventory in the class. I may have some missing assignments. So if you're thinking this is another opportunity to catch up on your work. So the most important things to make sure that you have done your poetry essay and that you do your fiction essay. You know, if you haven't done some of the smaller assignments, you know, I would say that if you're crunched for time, get those two done because they have the biggest impact on whether you pass or fail the class and meeting your grade. So, so take this time if you have not done your essays to turn it in. The poetry essay, you turn it in right to Blackboard. You don't do it at Turnitin. You go to Blackboard and there's a discussion. You just add your poetry essay there. So you should do it there. Any other questions popped up? Okay. So I want to say that. And so what we're going to do probably also by Monday is is work on an inventory, meaning like a update of where you are, in terms of like your assignments and if you've done your poetry essay or fiction, but you know what you've done, what you have done, what you haven't done. So I just want to connect with you because I want to be on the same page so that you understand, and I understand that whether you have or have not done something that we could metaphorically look each other in the eye and understand that, because I want you to get the best grade possible in this class. And it's not just about the grade. I know it is about the grade, but really it's also about the experience and development of you as a student in your academic career and as a writer, specifically in this class. And also just in your the work that we do here is about how we think and how we live and how we feel and how we're going to take all of this into our jobs and into our careers that we are striving for. So I encourage you to do the work and get it done. Definitely because of the grade, but also because of your own academic, human, intellectual development. Okay. Any questions with anything I talked about before we look at a graded assignment from a previous class? Yes. Okay. Thank you, Alan. Yeah, interaction's important. Okay, so let me just take a peek here. Yes. So I'm going to share my screen, and only because and over the next couple of days you're going to be looking at your you're going to be looking for your grade. So when you look, I'm not sure what you see. I see this is from a previous year, from like 2017. So these students should be way gone from here. But I see everyone here, and so what you would do is when you get to yours, you would look at it, right? And when you click it, there'll be a number at the top with a number here. And so that the grade is that's your grade, the number that's on top. And so 73 is like a C- or something like that. In your syllabus, there is a chart of, and I'll just pop it up real quick. So basically this is what it might look like, right? When you make this big, okay? So this is what it'll look like. When you open yours, have your name, right? Mine, this, whatever, have all that stuff. But it has different comments, right? So this is an article error. This is a verb. So many ways is to relate. That would be R. But
What does that mean?
What?
Article error. What does that mean?
The. Like the power of the cultural entrance. The article is the signifier before. Here, this is like the noun. So this would be the power of a cultural inference. How much can a parent's? So that's what it means, the article error. So here, verb is saying there's a problem with the verb here. And I can tell you the problem with the verb is that it should be are and instead of is relates. So cultural influence in our life in so many ways is relates to with our language, or maybe this would be just in many ways relates to our language with our language. SV means subject verb. So the subject and verb agreement is not. So all these purple ones are what the program is showing. This blue one here is me. Like I can also write comments and it'll say indent properly. So when you see your paper, it'll have these are also telling me that these are quoted from different places. And so if you're credited correctly, it's fine. And if not, then it's plagiarism, right? So you have to credit. If you use a quote from the book, very often when you're quoting the text, it'll highlight it because it's you're quoting Juno Diaz, or you're quoting whoever you're quoting, whatever section is, it'll be there. But see with this student, and so I'm giving you a sense, like these little comments, you can click them and it'll say. And these are the comments usually what I put in, and it'll tell you instead of on the poem, this would be in the poem. So when they click it, you see the word in. This is another subject verb. This is possessive, not her father's one, and so you'll see that it does. I picked a student that that had lots of errors and issues in the paper, so you can see sometimes it would look like that. And then this one has this is from a research paper. This has the work cited, and then the blue stuff is me making corrections, and that's that. Now what ends up happening, what could happen is sometimes students can't see it, they don't know that, and so they'll say, could you send me a report? And I'm going to click this little arrow, and this lets me do a report, right? So then I can email you a report if it's not clear, and it's preparing the download. Okay, and now it's downloaded. I'm going to open it up. And so another thing is I could send you this, and it'll give you a report with all the things we just saw, on the screen. And then at the end, it explains it all, right? What the numbers are, the spelling error, the subject verb error, the subject verb may not agree. And then this also gives you a report, right? And then the comments are the comments that I make in little comment boxes, right, to make changes. So that'll be a second thing if any of you are having trouble. Yes, okay. Right, okay. So, so I just wanted you to take a look at that together. And yes, Christian, I see. Oh no, I saw your comment. Yeah. So yeah, and I've been posting the class almost immediately. So if you go to our course content, that's the class schedule. Sometimes when this goes, almost like the same day, I try to post the class and give the class's name so you know what to do. So today it'll say Hamlet and review, Turnitin assignment. We'll do that. Okay. So any questions so far?
Yeah, Professor, it's Christian. I wrote on the chat that I was late because I was in an appointment and I just got home. But regarding the corrections, I saw them on Turnitin. And my professor from last semester from 110 did the same way, so I know how to see those corrections and all that. But the only thing is I didn't get a grade for that paper. Is you haven't graded them yet, or?
No, I haven't.
Oh, okay. So I was just wondering. Okay, yeah. When can we expect the grade?
I'm gonna begin grading them, like officially grading them. I'm gonna try this afternoon. So I usually start with the first ones who submitted the papers. I put them in order by submission, and I start with the first ones and I work my way up until the last ones. So that's another incentive for you to get works in on time. You get graded faster. But so the idea is I definitely by Sunday I'll be done with everybody who has submitted it. So that's what I'm saying. I mean, you submitted yours, but if someone in class today has not submitted it, please submit it so that I could. So that way on Monday when we come back together, we can all review them, and you can come in with your questions, and then we just set up office hours. We could do that as well. Okay.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? Okay, so I'm just going to show you a little bit of a video because we only have a couple minutes left of all this Hamlet stuff that I explained. There's something called Thug Notes, and I think I mentioned about the Glass Menagerie has one as well. But this is a kind of a guy who's trying to be funny, but he's this is like kind of like I would call him like a ghetto guy, a guy from the corner, you know, guys I would hang out with when I was a kid in my neighborhood, and he's going to explain a little bit of Hamlet. We won't see the whole thing, but we'll see a little bit of it, so you can see how people have fun with it. Oh, and he uses like, you know, street
What's
language.
happening, yo? This week on Thug Notes, we getting regal with Hamlet by William Shakespeare. This shit's going whack up in the kingdom of Elsinore. The old king's brother Claudius going to marry the king's old breezy Gertrude. And Queen Gertrude's son Hamlet getting all crunk since his mom acting like a hoe. Things get straight stupid when some guards peep the ghost of old King Hamlet creeping on the castle. Then them guards holler at Hamlet and tell him he gotta check this ghost. So Hamlet step up to his ghost daddy, who tell him that his brother Claudius was plotting on the crown and straight up iced his ass cold-blooded. Ghost daddy tell Hamlet that he gotta strap up and put a toe tag on that fool Claudius. Straight justice, know what I mean? Back in the castle, Hamlet's fool Ophelia getting an earful from her daddy Polonius and her brother Laertes. They say she need to steer clear of Hamlet since he might just hit it and quit it. Ophelia says good looking out and ignores all of Hamlet's hollering. So when Hamlet acting cray-cray at the thought of blocking Claudius, everybody just think he lovesick. Later, Hamlet decides he's gonna put on a play that reenacts how Claudius ghosted the old king. When Claudius sees this crime happening on stage, he books it for the exit. Now Hamlet knows for sure Ghost Daddy been spitting the truth. Later, Hammy rolls up to his mama crib where she asks him why he be disrespecting the king. All the while, Polonius be hiding listening in. When Hamlet and Gertrude get all up in each other's grill, Polonius screams like a bitch. Thinking it's that fool Claudius, Hamlet shakes that cat right through the curtain. Now Laertes getting crunk about Hamlet killing his father, and Ophelia starts losing her shit. So Claudius comes up with a plan that Laertes should dip his sword's tip in poison and challenge Hamlet to a duel. And if that don't work, Claudius gonna put some poison in Hamlet's wine. Now shit gets even more real when the queen busts in and says Ophelia done drowned. Damn. As Laertes and Hamlet bang out, the queen toasts to Hamlet, but accidentally slams some of that poison juice. Then Laertes and Hamlet both stab each other with that poison blade. Just then, Gertrude bites the dust, and Laertes starts snitching at Hamlet how Claudius be trying to poison him. So Hamlet stabs Claudius and makes him drink from that poison cup. Elizabethan haterade. Gotta have it. In the end, the royal family all laying in chalk. So the kingdom goes to some other soldier boy named Fortinbras.
Okay.
Now all throughout this play, Hamlet be all torn up about the task of putting one in Claudius's dome and keeps delaying. His procrastination is one of the most debated.
All right. Thanks for that. Well, I just think he's funny the way he tries to break it down, but there's a whole bunch of them online. And he uses crazy language. I don't always love it, but I think it's interesting how they could encapsulate it really quickly and give you the plot, the main plot lines of Hamlet. So if you had trouble following me, maybe he would help you understand some of the plot lines. So, okay, so that's it. That's what the time we have for today. Thank you for being here. I'll hang out here for another 10 minutes if people have questions. But if you don't have questions, have a good day. Enjoy yourselves. Enjoy the weekend. Read Ruby of Elsinore if you would like. If not, we'll read it together and look for your papers over the weekend. Thank you. Take care, Elizabeth. Take care, Stanjay. Thank you. I will plan to enjoy the weekend as well. All right, Adrian. You have a good day too. Bye. Take care, Rifa. Take care, Carissa. Take care, Carlos. You have a good weekend. Thank you. All right, Carl. All right, Xavier. I'll look for your paper. Take care, Kayla. Bye-bye. All right, Carl. Yeah, no, Catherine, you're good. I got yours. So I saw it both places.
Professor.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Is it like recommended to start the research paper now?
Yeah, I mean, the whole handout is there. If you want to take a look at the handout, I went over the two options. You can look through the options, and take a look at them. And certainly, next week we're going to spend more time. But you could take a look at it now if you've got, you already did your paper. You submitted it. If you feel like you want to start getting a head start on it, definitely look at it.
Yeah.
Do you have any questions?
Because when are we gonna start the drama essay or the theater essay?
So what we're gonna do is next week we'll read it, right? We'll read the play. We'll have time to discuss, and then we'll discuss it on Tuesday. But on Tuesday, I think you'll see we're gonna discuss specific aspects of it, and then you'll get the prompt on not Tuesday. I'm sorry, Wednesday. So next week you're gonna get you'll have the prompt to do for the paper, and that'll be like whatever date that is. That's the 21st, and still you have until the 3rd to finish it. So then we're going to be focusing on the research paper the rest of the weeks after.
Okay, so I'm gonna start the research paper before we start the drama essay. Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you, Professor. Have a good day.
Take care.
Thank you.
All right, Christian. Take care. Unless you have a question. If you do, you're muted, so I don't hear you. Okay. All right then. If you don't, that's cool too. All right, take it easy. Have a good weekend. Take care.